My mother abandoned me in the hospital with a broken arm to go on vacation. But when I called my dad, her nightmare was just beginning, and she never expected what CPS would uncover. I'm 15 years old. Well, almost 16 now. And I need to tell you what happened to me a few months ago because I still can't believe it's real. Like, when I think about it, it seems like a nightmare, but it's not. It actually happened. I guess I should start at the beginning. When my parents got divorced like 3 years ago. I don't remember it being super traumatic at the time, honestly, because they had already been fighting about everything for years, literally everything, from what to have for dinner to how to spend money, and I was already used to the yelling and door slamming. So when my mom sat me down in the living room and told me Dad was going to move out, I just thought, well, at least there won't be any more fights. You know? My dad moved to another city for work, like 2 hours away from here, and I stayed with my mom because she said it was best for my school and my friends and all that. At first it was okay. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible either. My mom, I worked from home making videos for Instagram and YouTube. She's like a beauty influencer or something. And I had my routine. My friends. My room. I saw my dad every other weekend and some holidays. And even though I missed him, I managed. But then my mom met Brian. It was like a year after the divorce, I think. Or maybe a year and a half. I'm not exactly sure. She met him somewhere. I think at a social media event or something like that. And suddenly he was at our house all the time. Brian is like 40 years old, works in finance or investments or something that sounds important but I never really understood. And he has 2 kids from a previous marriage, 2 boys who at that time were like 10 and 12. From the beginning, I didn't like Brian. I don't know. He had that energy of a guy who thinks he knows everything and needs to control everything around him. You know what I mean? But my mom was obsessed with him, like completely in love in a way I never saw her with my dad. And within a few months, they were already talking about getting married. I told my mom it seemed too fast, that they had only been dating for like 8 months, but she told me that when, you know, and that Brian was the love of her life and blah, blah, blah. And they got married when I was 13. It was a small but elegant wedding. And suddenly, Brian and his kids moved into our house. And that's when everything went to shit, basically. Brian wasn't bad in an obvious way, let's say. He didn't hit me or anything like that, but he was super critical and controlling about everything I did. If I wore shorts, he said they were too short, and that I looked inappropriate. If I went out with my friends, he wanted to know exactly where I was and with whom and what time I'd be back. And if I was 5 minutes late, he'd interrogate me like I was a criminal. And the worst part is that my mom always took his side. If I complained, she'd tell me that Brian only wanted what was best for me. That I should be grateful to have a father figure at home, that my dad wasn't there to take care of me, so Brian had to do it. Which was super unfair because my dad did want to be more present, but he lived far away for work, not because he didn't care. But my mom never wanted to hear that. Brian's kids, his 2 precious perfect boys, could do whatever they wanted, and there were never any consequences. They broke my stuff, like my headphones or my books, and when I complained, Brian said they were accidents and that I was being dramatic. Once the older one, who's like 14 now, grabbed my phone without permission and started reading my messages with my friends. And when I told my mom about it, she said I was probably exaggerating and that I shouldn't have secrets anyway. I started crying and went to my room, and nobody came to see if I was okay. That's basically what life was like. I was always the problem, always exaggerating or being difficult or needing an attitude adjustment, while those 2 brats were little angels who did nothing wrong. My mom changed a lot after marrying Brian. I mean, she had always been a bit superficial with her whole influencer thing, but with Brian it got worse. She spent all day getting ready and recording videos and going to events with him, and she almost never had time for me. If I needed help with homework or wanted to tell her something about school, she was busy editing a video or getting ready to go out. And Brian, well, he basically acted like I was an uncomfortable guest in my own house, you know? Like he tolerated my presence but clearly would have preferred if I wasn't there. I talked to my dad several times about moving in with him, but he told me it was legally complicated because the custody agreement gave primary custody to my mom. And besides, his apartment was small and I'd have to change schools and leave my friends. So I stayed, even though every day was more and more miserable. Like 6 or 7 months ago, Brian got a promotion at work, a big one that came with a huge bonus. and he decided the whole family would go on vacation to celebrate. And when I say the whole family, I clearly mean him, my mom, and his 2 kids. But technically I was included too, I guess. They planned this super luxurious trip to an all-inclusive resort in Cancun, a whole week, and my mom wouldn't stop talking about it. They bought new clothes, booked excursions, made plans for every day. I honestly wasn't very excited. I knew it was going to be a week of feeling excluded while they did their perfect family thing. But at least I'd be out of the house for a while. The day before we were supposed to leave, my mom and I went to the mall to buy some last-minute stuff, like sunscreen and things like that. We were on our way back home. Her driving and me in the passenger seat, and I was on my phone watching videos or whatever. I don't know exactly what happened. I think she got distracted looking at her phone because a notification went off, or maybe it was the other driver. But suddenly there was a horrible braking sound and a super hard impact. The airbag went off and hit me in the face, and I remember everything was spinning and there was smoke or dust in the air, and I couldn't breathe well. My mom was screaming, I was screaming, and there was glass everywhere. My arm hurt in a horrible way, and when I tried to move it, I couldn't. It just wouldn't respond. The ambulance came, they took us both to the hospital, and it turns out I had broken my arm. I mean, not a small fracture, but a bad fracture that needed a full cast from my hand to almost my shoulder. I also had a concussion, which meant I had to stay for observation in the hospital for at least 1 night, maybe 2. My mom only had bruises and was a bit sore, but nothing serious. They discharged her the same day. I was in the hospital bed with an unbearable headache, and my arm immobilized, and all I could think was that the trip had been canceled, obviously, because I couldn't fly like this, much less go swimming and do all those activities they had planned. But then my mom and Brian showed up in my hospital room. It was like 7 at night already, and my mom had that face she makes when she's about to tell me something she knows I'm not going to like. And Brian was standing there with his arms crossed with that expression of impatiently waiting for this to be over. My mom sat on the edge of my bed and told me, "Look, Isabella, I know this is difficult, but I talked to the doctors and they say you're going to be fine. You just need rest." And I said, "Yes, Mom, I know. I guess we'll have to cancel the trip, right?" And she was quiet for a second, looking at Brian, and then said, "Well, that's what we want to talk to you about. It turns out we talked and decided it doesn't make sense for everyone to cancel the trip just because you can't go. The tickets aren't refundable. We already paid for the hotel, and Brian worked very hard for this promotion, and deserves this vacation." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I literally thought I was hallucinating from the concussion. I said, "Wait, are you telling me you're going to go on the trip and leave me here alone in the hospital?" And Brian intervened with that condescending voice he always uses and said, "Don't be dramatic, Isabella. You're not going to be alone. There are nurses and doctors here 24 hours. You'll be perfectly fine. Besides, you only have to stay 1 or 2 more nights, and when you get out, you can stay at home. You're already 15. You're old enough to take care of yourself for a few days." My mom quickly added, "We'll leave you money for food and a neighbor will check that you're okay. It'll only be 5 days, and your dad can come see you if you really need it." And I just sat there staring at them, with tears running down my face, because I couldn't believe my own mother was proposing this to me, that she was basically going to abandon me in the hospital to go on vacation with her new husband. I tried to reason with her. I told her I was scared, that everything hurt, that the doctors had said someone needed to take care of me when I got out because I could have dizziness or nausea from the concussion. But she just kept repeating that I was going to be fine, not to be so dependent, that I had to learn to be more mature and responsible. Brian said something about how I always looked for attention and that this was a perfect example of that I was trying to ruin everyone's vacation with my drama. And my mom didn't contradict him, didn't defend me, just nodded and told me to understand their situation. They told me they were leaving the next morning, early, that the flight left at 7 a.m., and that they'd stop by to say goodbye before leaving, but that I'd probably still be asleep. And just like that, they left. Left me there crying in that hospital bed with my broken arm and my head that wouldn't stop hurting. I didn't sleep at all that night. I was basically crying every time a nurse didn't come to check on me. In the early morning, like 6 a.m., my mom sent a message that said, "Leaving for the airport, behave yourself and we'll see you in a week. Love you, love you." Can you believe it? Like that made everything okay? I waited until like 8 a.m., when I knew they'd already be on the plane and couldn't come back. and I asked the nurse on duty if she could please help me call my dad. She saw I'd been crying and asked me if I was okay, and I couldn't take it anymore and told her everything, that my mom and her husband had gone on vacation and left me alone. The nurse looked horrified, like genuinely shocked, and told me yes, that she'd call my dad immediately, and that she was also going to report this because it wasn't normal or legal to leave a minor alone in the hospital. And they called my dad, and when they told him what had happened, he went crazy. I could hear him yelling on the phone from where I was. He said he was leaving, immediately, and would be there in 2 hours maximum, and that nobody should discharge me until he got there. And he kept his word. He arrived in less than 2 hours, came running into my room with his eyes all red like he'd been crying on the way, and hugged me so tight it hurt my arm, but I didn't care. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I should have been here. I should never have left you with her." And I just cried and cried because finally there was someone who really cared about me, you know? My dad talked to the doctors, talked to social workers at the hospital, talked to everyone. He demanded copies of all my medical reports, asked exactly what care I needed, made sure he understood everything about my concussion and my broken arm. The doctors told him it was imperative that someone monitor me for at least 72 hours after the accident, that I shouldn't be alone at any time, and that whoever left me alone would be putting my health at serious risk. My dad was furious, and honestly, I'd never seen him that angry. He stayed with me all day, slept in the uncomfortable chair next to my bed that night, and when they discharged me the next day, he took me straight to his apartment. He called my mom like 1,000 times, but she didn't answer. Obviously, because she was in Cancun enjoying her vacation with Brian and the kids. Finally, he left her a voicemail saying that I was with him and that when she got back, they were going to have a very serious conversation about her negligence, and that he was considering taking this to court and seeking full custody. He also said something about filing charges for child abandonment. I don't remember exactly, but he was super serious. He sent her text messages too, saying basically the same thing, and she eventually responded with something like, "You're exaggerating. Isabella is fine, and this is typical of you trying to cause problems in my marriage," which made no sense. Like, she was the one who abandoned me, not my dad. My dad called Child Protective Services, or whatever it's called here, CPS, I think, and reported what had happened. He explained to them that my mom had left me alone in the hospital after a car accident to go on vacation, that I was a minor and had injuries that required constant supervision, and that he was worried about my safety if I went back to her. CPS said they were going to investigate and would talk to my mom when she got back. He also went to consult with a lawyer about modifying the custody agreement, though he told me that process could take months. In the meantime, I stayed with him at his apartment, and it was so weird. Like, it was small and didn't have much space. I slept on the couch the first few nights until he bought a fold-out bed. But I felt safer there than in my whole house with my mom. When my mom got back from Cancun, like 5 days later, she already knew everything had exploded because my dad wouldn't stop sending her messages and leaving voicemails. She finally called me. Super angry. Yelling that I had ruined everything. How dare I call CPS and accuse her of negligence? That she was my mother and had always done what was best for me. I told her she had abandoned me in the hospital to go on vacation, and that wasn't doing what was best for me. That was abandoning me when I needed her most. She started crying and saying I didn't understand. That she had also been in the accident and was stressed. That Brian had worked so hard and deserved that trip. That I was old enough to understand that sometimes adults need time for themselves. But I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I basically told her I didn't want to live with her ever again and that I was going to stay with my dad. She got worse, saying I couldn't make that decision, that legally she had custody and if I didn't come back, there would be consequences. My dad grabbed the phone and told her very calmly but firmly that I wasn't going back to that house, that she had lost the right to have me there when she decided a vacation was more important than her daughter's health, and that if she tried to force me to return, he was going to fight with everything he had in court. She hung up, screaming, and I didn't hear from her for like 2 weeks. Eventually, CPS went to my mom's house to investigate. She and Brian told them their version, that I was fine in the hospital, that there were nurses taking care of me, that they had left arrangements for when I got out, basically trying to make it sound reasonable. But the social workers talked to me too, and I told them the truth about everything. Not just the accident, but what it had been like living there the last few years, the favoritism towards Brian's kids, how my mom never had time for me, everything. My dad gave them copies of the medical reports from the hospital and statements from the nurses who were with me and saw I was alone. My mom called me after CPS finished their investigation, and she was desperate, like begging me to tell CPS it had all been a misunderstanding, that I had exaggerated things, that actually she had made arrangements for me to be taken care of, and I was just angry because I couldn't go on the trip. She told me if I didn't withdraw the accusations, Brian was going to have problems at work because having a CPS report could affect his reputation, and that it was my fault their marriage was under strain now. She tried to make me feel guilty, saying how could I do this to her? That she had given me everything. That after everything she had sacrificed for me, I was betraying her. And I just told her, you left me alone in a hospital to go on vacation? There's nothing to explain or exaggerate. That's what you did. CPS in the end didn't take away her custody or anything like that, but they did give her an official warning and forced her to take parenting classes, which embarrassed her a lot because she said it made her look like a bad mother, which, like, if the shoe fits. They also recommended that the custody agreement be modified to give my dad more time, considering I clearly wanted to be with him and they had concerns about my well-being with my mom. It's been like 4 months since all that. I live with my dad now. Officially, I changed schools and everything. At first it was weird, because I didn't know anyone, and my dad's apartment is definitely smaller than my mom's house. But honestly, I'm happier here than I've been in years. My dad asks me how my day was when I get home from school. We have dinner together every night. He helps me with my homework when I need it. He does normal dad things that I had forgotten existed. I made new friends at school, and 2 weeks ago my dad organized a birthday party for me. Small, but with cake and decorations and everything. And it was the first time I had a real party in like 3 years because my mom always said she was too busy to organize those things. My mom sends me messages sometimes, trying to get me to come visit her, saying she misses me and that things can be different. But I don't know. Like, part of me still loves her because she's my mom. But another part is still super angry and hurt about what she did. My dad says he's not going to force me to do anything, that when and if I'm ready to talk to her again, it's my decision. For now, I just want to be here, where someone really cares about me. My arm healed completely already, which is good. Though I still have nightmares sometimes about the accident, about being alone in that hospital room crying while my mom got on a plane. My dad says maybe I should talk to a therapist about that. And he's probably right. Last week, my stepbrother, the older one of Brian's sons, sent me a message apologizing for how they treated me when I lived there. He said he realizes now that he and his brother crossed the line many times and that his dad should have disciplined them more. I don't know what to think about that yet. I appreciate that he apologized, I guess, but it doesn't change anything that happened. My mom also sent a long message a few days ago, telling me she and Brian are in couples therapy and that she's working on herself and hopes someday I can forgive her. I responded with an okay and nothing else, because I don't know what else to say. Yesterday, my dad and I went for a walk in the park near his apartment, and he asked me if I was happy here. I told him yes, that for the first time in a long time I felt like someone really loved me and put me first, you know? His eyes got a little watery, and he told me he regretted not getting me out of there sooner, that he knew things weren't okay but didn't imagine how bad they really were. I told him it wasn't his fault, that he didn't know because I didn't tell him everything because I was afraid of causing more problems. He hugged me and told me I never have to be afraid to tell him things again, that that's what he's there for, to protect me and take care of me. I don't know what's going to happen long term with my mom. Maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship. I don't know. But for now I need space and I need to be in a place where I feel safe. And that place is here, with my dad, in this small apartment where there's no drama or favoritism or people who make me feel like I'm a burden. It's just the two of us learning to be a family again. And honestly, that's enough for me right now.